Hi there guys, welcome to another Ross Pro Productions video. Within this video I'm going to show you how to replace an alternator on a 2009 Ford Falcon XR6. It's been having some problems with its alternator, battery's been going flat, we've tried a few different batteries. Batteries don't seem to be the problem, it's definitely the alternator charging it. I'll now show you how to test it and then replace it. So first things first, we need to open the bonnet, so come over to the driver's side of the vehicle. Just down in the footwell, just above the accelerator, see this tab. Pull that nice and hard, and that's now released the bonnet. So we come around to the front, just above the Ford badge, just over to the right hand side, there's a tab, and that's how you open the bonnet. Okay, I'm now going to show you some very simple tests. Now, there's a few different ways you can determine the alternator is broken or on its way out. One of which is the battery light on the dashboard will actually come on. That hasn't happened on this car yet because the alternator seems to be partially working. And how we test that is, first off, get a multimeter. Obviously connect the black to the negative terminal, unveil the positive terminal, and connect the red onto the positive. Then turn your multimeter onto DC, so this is a DC because it's obviously battery, not off of your home power. Now we're measuring about 12.65 volts on that battery then, where it's a good position to be on a battery, showing that the battery's holding a strong charge. You want to be anywhere from about 12.2 up to about 12.8 on a good battery. So this is a test, car's off, we know the battery's holding 12.6 volts. The next test is to actually start the car up, and now we'll see if that goes up or down, and that will determine whether the alternator is putting the charge back into the battery. Let me start the car now. Okay, now with the car started but not on load, which means we don't have any of the ancillary items such as lights, radio, air conditioning on, we're measuring about 13.6 volts. Now really with a good strong alternator you want to be above the 14 volts mark. Let's turn all the lights on, the radio on, the air conditioning, and see what that goes down to now. Okay, so the car's now on full load, we've got the air conditioning running, the lights on and the radio on. We're about 13.5859, which is telling us that the alternator is actually still putting a charge back into the battery, but again we really want to aim for that 14 volts mark. Okay, with the bonnet open you will actually notice I've removed the radiator fan. Now in doing so it gives us quite a lot more space. I have just done this for the video, but it's quite an easy process. I've actually made another video on how to remove and replace the radiator fan, so please check that out if you want to do the same. So what you'll see now is our power steering pump, just below that is our alternator. Now because we're going to be working on the electrical system on this car, it's always best practice to disconnect at least one of the battery terminals. Because there is a direct connection between the alternator and the positive terminal, I've chose to undo the positive terminal in this instance. Now all I'm going to use is a 10mm socket. Just lift it off and make sure it's tucked well out of the way where it can't jump up and reconnect. Okay, so looking down where the radiator fan was, giving us a bit more space now. Like I say, your choice if you want to do that or not. So here's our belt tensioner. I've got a breaker bar here with a 3/8 inch converter, so from 1/2 inch to 3/8. Just going to allow me to get a bit of pressure on there. So pop that into the square on the belt tensioner, and then you're going to pull that up clockwise and you'll actually see the belts become loose. So all you're going to do, just pull that belt off like that, remembering how the belt goes back on, and then that's actually taking it off of our alternator here, so it's freed that up, ready for when we disconnect it. We're now looking at the back of the alternator, and what we're going to do is we're going to pull this harness just down, and that pulls that out of the grommet just there, and then pull this rubber boot off the back of the alternator connection, and that exposes a 13mm nut. So get a 13mm spanner down there or socket, depending on what you want to use. Anti-clockwise, should come off fairly easy. Take it off fully, pull the cable off after, There is another electrical connection down there, but we can't actually get to that just yet. And now we're going to undo this 10mm bolt just here as well. Withdraw that fully, and then we have the two to the front to undo as well. To disconnect the other alternator connection, come underneath the car, make sure it's jacked up high enough and well supported. You'll notice this connection just here on the alternator towards the back of the car. This one's black in colour. Now all you want to do is just reach around and press the little button in here and pull down sharply, and that will disconnect this connection. So now to undo the front two 10mm bolts, we've got one down the bottom there and just one up the top there. I'm actually going to undo the bottom one first. So withdraw that fully. And we're just going to loosen the top one. So now your alternator is loose. We've just got a few turns holding it on the top. So what we're going to do is we're going to slowly remove this one until we feel it just disconnect. Okay, now with the alternator completely loose, we can retract it. You can do that through the top of the car. First off, remove the reservoir cap to the power steering fluid. This just makes it a little bit easier, and then pull this plastic component off like that. Set that aside, that will go straight back on afterwards. Now you're going to need two hands to do this, one at the back, one at the front. You're going to slowly retract it, pull it forward, bring it straight up, make sure you don't hit the radiator at all. And there you go. That's our old alternator. Now we'll compare these on the floor, make sure we've bought the right one. Like I said, just compare the new with the old, take some measurements, make sure the pulley's the same. I'm confident I've got the right one here. Then we'll start to put the new one back in. Just the same but in reverse to get the new one back in. So straight down. Start to get two hands on it so you can manoeuvre it into place. Rest it up. Get your two 10mm bolts from earlier, making sure the alternator's lined up. Start to pass the first one in. Rotate the alternator up. Then pass the second one in. Start to do them up by hand. And then get your ratchet. Okay, so making sure these are both nice and tight but don't over tighten. Go back, check your first one. Now replace your 10mm bolt to the back. And do that one up as tight as you can as well without stripping thread. Okay, so now going under the car, we're going to reconnect the alternator connector, so you're just going to retrieve that from earlier. Just plug that straight on there. While you're under as well, just put the harness back in, and then we'll do the other connection from on top the same way we undone it. Okay, and to do the last main connector to the alternator, just going to take off the new nut there, the 13mm. Get our cable from earlier, slide that all the way over, 13mm nut back on, all the way up, get a spanner, just give it a few turns, not too tight but not too loose. There we go, and then slide the rubber all the way back over and make sure it engages so it's not going to come off. Okay, we're now going to put our belt back on, so make sure it's all around the right way, make sure it's engaged nicely on every pulley. And what I'd actually do is put on the alternator first, and the last one will actually be this one here. Get a breaker bar from earlier, you're just going to pull that clockwise, line up the belt nicely all the way around and release. Now just have a quick check around all the pulleys, make sure it's in the right grooves, make sure it's not sticking out anywhere, it's all on all the tensioners. I'm happy with that. Okay, so just put the positive terminal back on the battery now, make sure it's nice and tight, nice and clean. Get your 10mm from earlier. Okay. I'll now put the radiator fan back on. Remember, that's a separate video, but please check it out if you want to know how to do so. So now the new alternator is fitted, we're going to test it again. So first off, just connect your multimeter to the battery and test. So I'm getting 12.6, which is about what we had before. And now we're going to start the car on full load and see if we're closer to that 14 volts mark. And there you go, that's the car on full load, which means we've got all of the electrical items on with the new alternator, and we're up near the 14 volts mark. We're about 13.8, 13.9, which is showing that we're getting a good strong charge from that alternator. And there you go, that's my video on how to remove and replace an alternator on a Ford Falcon. Now, I have done some post-fitting testing to the alternator, and I'm getting between 13.8 and 14.2 volts, which is about where we want to be. It will also be more consistent than the old alternator was. I've also made some videos in this car on how to replace the brakes, remove and replace the radiator fan, clean out the airbox, and where the OBD2 port and the fuse box are. If you found this video helpful, please give me the thumbs up and subscribe to my channel.